Welcome back everybody to another video. In this video we are gonna compare the PS5 Pro with the base PS5 and the Xbox Series X. Gonna be really unbiased in this video and give you guys my objective analysis of these consoles so you can pretty much decipher if you should upgrade or get one or the other, and what are the main differences when it comes to the hardware in reality. Mainly going to focus on the hardware aspect of things and the graphic fidelity. So obviously we know that the PS5 Pro, it's going to be, when it comes to hardware, going to have the most flops, going to be the most beefy. But how much is it worth buying it? Is it worth, upgrading to it and all that? We're gonna get into all that and give you guys my thoughts on it and what actually happens. Now, remember, let's just assume that your TV or monitor can output 4K at 120 hertz with HDR, right? That is really what these console is targeting for the target demographic, right? So if you're not even running 4K at 120 hertz, 1440p at 120 hertz, or 1080p at 120 hertz, it's not gonna really matter. If you get a PS5 Pro, sure, you're gonna get, if you want the latest and greatest, then that's nothing wrong with that. But if you're trying to if you're not really running 4K at 120, 1440p at 120 but HDR, it don't really matter. So that being said, I'm gonna go over quickly on some of the key specs, important specs of this hardware. I'm gonna go through it as painlessly as possible. For the PS5 Pro, pretty much it's got, for the CPU, 8-core 16-thread AMD Zen 2 CPU. The GPU is AMD Radeon RDNA 3-base engine with a 16.7 teraflops processing power. Your RAM is 16 gigabits for the GDR6. Your 2 gigabits DDR5 at 18 gigabits per second. Has a custom 2 terabyte solid state drive for storage. For the connectivity, is the Wi-Fi 7. Ethernet port, Bluetooth, HDMI 2.1, and supports Dolby Atmos and HDR10. And they got their PSSR, their artificial intelligence for enhanced imaging quality, which is their PlayStation Spectral Super Resolution. On the PS5 side, the CPU is 8-core AMD Zen 2x86 to 64 processor. The GPU is custom AMD Radeon RDNA 2-base graphics engine with ray tracing acceleration, capable of doing 10.3 teraflops at 2.23 gigs. The memory is 16 gigabits GDDR6, memory bandwidth of 448 gigabits. Storage, custom 825 gigabits solid state drive. The I/O throughput is the 5.5 gigabits raw read bandwidth. Connectivity is Ethernet, Wi-Fi 6, Bluetooth, HDMI 2.1, supports Dolby Atmos, HDR10. And finally, for the Xbox Series X, the CPU is a custom 8-core AMD Zen 2 CPU at 3.8 gigahertz, a GPU custom AMD RDNA 2 GPU with 52 CUs at 1.825 gigahertz, delivering a 12 teraflop processing power. For the memory and storage, the RAM is 16 gigabits with the GDDR6 memory with a 320-bit wide bus. 10 gigabits of RAM, runs at 560 gigabits for GPU's tasks, and 6 gigabits of RAM runs 336 gigabits for the system functions. The storage internally is a 1 terabyte custom solid state drive. The connectivity is 802.11 AC dual band Wi-Fi gigabit Ethernet with HDMI of 2.1. Supports Dolby Atmos, Dolby Vision, DTS:X, and HDR10. Now, in reality, when you're gaming, so on the PS5 Pro, it's really doing the capabilities of a PS5 Pro. Obviously, I have it on there. You can see it 8K at 60 hertz, 4K at 60 hertz, HDR, 4K 120, HDR, 1440p 120, HDR, 1080p 120 HDR. It has auto low latency and variable refresh rate support. And on the PS5, same thing pretty much, but it's not, through my research, it cannot do 8K at 60. It's basically 4K. That's why when you buy, even when you buy the PS5 Pro, it doesn't even tell you, it doesn't even advertise 8K no more. But through research, it can output 8K if you have an 8K device and upscale to 8K. But as far as the PS5, the base model, my original box says 8K. It's not 8K. It can only do 4K max. Just on a side note. And for the Xbox Series X, it's 8K, 4K at 60 hertz, HDR, 4K at 120 hertz, HDR, 1440p at 120 hertz, no HDR, 1080p at 120 hertz, no HDR, auto low latency, and variable refresh rate support. Now, that is very important to understand and to note that when, as of right now, if you're going, if for the Xbox Series X, if you're lowering your resolution to run 120 hertz because your TV is not capable of doing 4K at 120, at 1440p and 1080p, just know that you're not going to be running HDR. And with all the consoles here, the PS5 Pro and the base PS5 and the Xbox Series X, depending on your TV, you might not be taking advantage of the VRR support. Just kind of depends on your device. But all three consoles has auto low latency mode, and that's just for a side note. So all that out of the way, in reality, right? That's what it is. You're not gonna really know that you don't have HDR when it comes to Xbox side when you run less than 4K. They're not going to advertise that, but it's always been that way for the longest time, and it's a shame. But HDR is nice to have, but it's not necessary. I just don't know why they can't do it if they can do it on the PS5. Now, as far as the audio, PlayStation has come a long way. I'm just glad they have Dolby Atmos. And DTSX is, in my book, I prefer that. But as long as you have Dolby Atmos, it's all that matters. So we're just going to say that since there's no HDR when you run less than 4K on Xbox, and there's no DTSX on support for the PlayStation, we're gonna eliminate it. Those two is gonna cancel each other out. I'm just kidding. That's just a little jokey joke. So anyways, so now if we're gonna rank the graphic fidelity, the quality of gaming with the PS5 Pro, the Xbox Series X, and the PS5, the regular PS5, obviously now that you know that if you run under 4K HDR, it's gonna really affect the ranking. So for the ranking, right? So let's rank. When it comes to running games 4K at 120 hertz, number one is gonna have to be the PS5 Pro. Number two will be the Xbox Series X. Number three will be the PS5. When it comes to 1440p at 120 hertz, number one is the PS5 Pro still. Number two will be the PS5. Number three will be the Xbox Series X. And finally, for 1080p, when you run 1080p at 120 hertz, number one will be the PS5 Pro. Number two will be the PS5, and number 3 would be the Xbox Series X. And as far as the variable refresh rate and the auto low latency mode, on all systems is pretty much on par, and it all solely depends on your device and the capabilities that it can handle. So that is pretty much my take on the ranking when it comes to gaming. Now I'm gonna give you guys another objective opinion. Now, if you are thinking about buying a PS5 Pro, this is how you gotta look at it, right? And assuming that your TV can handle 4K at 120, so at least that, and then it can take the, what do you call it, advantage of the graphic fidelity. Now, I also want to say on a side note, a lot of the Xbox Series X games, the older ones, the way the architecture is made, a lot of the games, it's automatically, a lot of them are automatically enhanced or optimized to look its greatest on the Xbox Series X. So a lot of the games on the Xbox side will take full advantage of the hardware and the graphic fidelity of the Xbox Series X. On the PS5 Pro, the games that will take advantage of it, sounds like there's not that much lineup for that, but that PSSR does seem to enhance the image, but I don't know how much it really can enhance their quality if the game, or the older games especially, is not optimized to accommodate for the PS5 Pro. But that's neither here or there. Maybe we can't even tell. That's just a side note. So now, if you're thinking about buying a PS5 Pro, this is how I would think of it, right? So let's take your standard dynamic range, right? Then you got high dynamic range. If your SDR and your HDR, if you have to have HDR over SDR, obviously then you're gonna want a PS5 Pro. So if you have HDR10 and you prefer Dolby Vision, if you can tell the difference between a Dolby Vision, your high dynamic range Dolby Vision, and then you got the high dynamic range 1000 or high dynamic range 10, if you can tell the difference between the HDR 1000, HDR10 over the HDR Dolby Vision, right? This HDR10, HDR Dolby Vision. If you can see the major leap of that dynamic range of color for the Dolby Vision, definitely you're gonna have to buy the PS5 Pro. So that being said, like, if you have an Xbox Series X or a PS5 and you can tell the difference between Dolby Vision and HDR10, you're gonna need a PS5 Pro. But if HDR and HDR to you is not much of a difference, you don't need to buy PS5 Pro. If HDR10 and HDR Dolby Vision, if that differences is not much to you, then you don't need a PS5 Pro. So that is pretty much how I would recommend for those who want to buy a PS5 Pro and not. As far as pricing and the increase of pricing, that's all subjective, because if you're gonna want the latest and greatest, you're gonna have to pay for it, even if they bump up the price for no apparent reason, other than just to make more profit. And it's all a matter of opinion. Who really knows? But that's pretty much my take on a PS5 Pro, PS5, and Xbox Series X. And before I go, basically, if you're wondering, well, let me ask you guys this question. Leave it in the comments and keep it friendly. Which one would you have? Which consoles do you have? Or which one do you want to have? And which one you think is better in your opinion? And then give me the reasons why. And for me, hardware-wise, that PS5 Pro, it is beefier. And it's beefier enough to justify the price, I guess, but it's not necessary. You can live with the PS5 base PS5 just fine, and Xbox Series X, even though when you run less than 4K, it's not gonna have HDR. It's just fine. It not that noticeable, and you'll be just fine. Just want to put that out there. Thanks guys for staying this long. Thanks guys for watching. Subscribe, like, subscribe. That's my time. Gotta go. I'll catch you guys on the next one. Hooded Dragons out.